Well, thank you. I'm very glad I came. This has been an interesting hearing. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Now, pay close attention.
I always do whenever
I know
you
you
ask me a
do.
question.
The purpose of the Patriot Act and the FISA Court and the National Security Administration is to make sure that we're aware of terrorist activity and disrupting plots against our interests abroad and at home. Is that true?
I would agree with that.
The purpose of the Patriot Act is not to allow the executive branch to gather political intelligence on the judicial branch or the legislative branch. Do you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
So this is like killing innocent people in a cafe. I know exactly what you're trying to say. There is no lawful authority in the law of war or in any other statute to drone somebody who's done nothing wrong anywhere. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree with that.
We're trying to capture and kill people who we believe present a national security threat to our nation, right?
Also true.
And one thing we're trying to do in this Patriot Act is to find out about terrorist organizations and individual terrorists, who they may be talking to.
Again, I'd say
Well,
that is an overall.
I hope American people appreciate we're at war, because I sure as hell do. I hope the American people appreciate that the way you protect the homeland is you try to find out what the enemy's up to. I'm a Verizon customer. It doesn't bother me one bit for the National Security Administration to have my phone number, because what they're trying to do is find out what terrorist groups we know about and individuals and who the hell are calling. And if my number pops up on some terrorist phone, I'm confident that the FISA court is not going to allow my phone calls to be monitored by my government unless you and others can prove to them that I'm up to terrorist activity through a probable cause standard. So I may come out differently than my colleagues on this. This was created by the Congress, and if we've made mistakes and we've gotten outside the lane, we're going to get back inside the lane. But the consequence of taking these tools away from the American people through their government would be catastrophic. So you keep up what you're doing, and if you've gone outside the lane, you fix it. President Bush started it. President Obama's continuing it. We need it from my point of view. Now, under the law of war, there are three branches of government. What branch of government is in charge of actually implementing and executing the war?
The executive branch.
So we don't have 535 commanders-in-chief. We have one, right?
That's true.
Okay, can you tell me any other time in any other war where our judiciary took over the decision of who to target, who the enemy was, and whether or not to use lethal force from the executive branch?
I'm not aware of that. We obviously operate within legal parameters, but within those legal parameters, it is generally.
I will be astonished for America during this war to turn over from the commander-in-chief the ability to use lethal force to a bunch of unelected judges who have absolutely no expertise and no background as to who the enemy is and whether or not we should use lethal force. I think the worst possible thing we could do is to take away from this commander-in-chief and any other commander-in-chief the power to determine who the enemy is in a time of war and what kind of force to use, and give it to a bunch of judges. That would be the ultimate criminalization of the war. I support you for having transparency and for making a hard call. But you have, from my point of view, been more than reasonable when it comes to the drone program. And to an American citizen, if you side with the enemy, and we go through a laborious process to determine if you have, we will kill you or capture you. The best way to avoid that is not help al-Qaeda. Anwar al-Awlaki was an American citizen in Yemen. Any doubt in your mind he was helping al-Qaeda?
None, and if you look at that letter that I sent, we laid out exactly why he was a target, that he was an appropriate target.
And there are other American citizens we know who have associated with al-Qaeda. One of them's a spokesman, is that correct?
That is correct.
If we find him, kill him, or capture him, don't go to the court, and you don't need my permission to do it because it's your job. It's the executive branch job. Finally, she asked a very good question. Would this administration use Guantanamo Bay in the future to house a law of war capture?
I think the president has been pretty clear. It is not our intention to add any additional prisoners to.
Okay, so it goes back to her question. A jail can't be a ship. Under the Geneva Convention, that is not a viable option. So we're a nation without a jail. And the reason we put the guy on the ship, we've got no place to put him. And this is going to catch up with us, Mr. Attorney General. This nation has lost the ability to gather intelligence because we don't have a prison to put people. And if we don't correct that, we're going to lose valuable intelligence. And this last question, do you agree with me that the people we've had at Gitmo for years, that the intelligence we've gathered humanely through the law of war interrogation has made this country safer and was one of the big reasons we got bin Laden?
Well, I think that, you know, one of the reasons we got, or one of the many reasons we got Osama bin Laden was the intelligence that we gathered from a variety of
Would you agree with me that one of the treasure troves of intelligence regarding the war on terror has come from people at Gitmo?
Well, at this point, you have some people who have been there for 10 and 11 years, 8 years, and their intelligence value is close to zero at this point.
Well, some people may be, but the war is changing. What I'm trying to say is there's no doubt in my mind that we didn't torture our way to getting bin Laden. We put the puzzle together, and the big pieces of the puzzle were people we had at Gitmo. Last question, sequestration. What is it doing to your ability to protect us as a nation?
We are struggling really to keep our resources at a level where we can do our job. Since January of 2011, I put a hiring freeze in place. We've lost 2,400 people. We've lost about 600 prosecutors through the help of this committee.
When you say lost, what does that mean? Did they quit? I don't mean to interrupt you, sir, but could you be clear on what you mean by
These
the
are
word
people
lost?
who have left the Department of Justice and who have not been replaced. So we are a smaller Department of Justice than we were before I instituted the hiring freeze. If we do not get assistance in 2014, the furloughs that we were able to avoid because of your assistance, Ranking Member Shelby, those are furloughs that we would have to institute, and you will have FBI agents who are not on the streets, prosecutors who are not in the courts. And you're going to see, my guess would be that whoever the Attorney General is a year, 2 years from now, you're going to see reduced numbers with regard to prosecutions. And I think that will be a function of this sequestration that we're trying to deal with, and we've tried to deal with, again, with your help.
I have such a great committee.